I'm a 36-year-old woman who once held the prestigious position of sales director at one of New York's largest cosmetic companies. My husband, Jim, aged 62, was not just the owner of the company I worked for, but also the love of my life, or so I thought. When we first met, he was captivated not only by my professional skills, but also by my charm. In just 1 month, I managed to win his heart, and he promptly proposed marriage. Naturally, I accepted. Who wouldn't want to marry the wealthiest bachelor in town? Despite the 26-year age gap, Jim and I never encountered any significant obstacles in our relationship. He had a remarkable tolerance for my occasional complaints about minor issues, ensuring that our disagreements stayed minimal and never escalated into full-blown fights. Jim knew almost everything about me, my desires, dislikes, and even some of my well-kept secrets. However, he remained unaware that I was slowly succumbing to boredom and had been discreetly keeping tabs on my longtime crush through social media. Leo, a 36-year-old man, was a high school crush that I never outgrew. Even now, whenever someone mentioned his name, I would react with teenage enthusiasm. It was because Leo possessed the most captivating pair of eyes on the planet. He had made me feel truly special with a memorable dance during our prom night, a moment that stood out when nobody else would have me as a date. It completely transformed my life. You can't just forget the person who boosted your self-esteem on the most pivotal night of your teenage years. So, picture my heart shattering when I found out he had married a churchmate 6 years ago. I mean, I was undeniably more attractive than that woman, and I'm sure everyone was wondering why he chose her. That's probably why I immediately accepted Jim's proposal when he asked me to marry him a year later. I knew then that my chances with Leo were gone, or so I believed. One day, a former classmate messaged me with news about Leo and his wife getting a divorce. I was so shocked and excited that I almost dropped my coffee mug. I could hardly contain myself, but I realized that if I wanted a shot with Leo, this was the perfect opportunity. So after a month, I initiated a conversation with him and engaged in some casual chatting. Eventually, I offered my assistance, knowing that he was trying to move on with his life. Of course, I couldn't reveal how thrilled I was to reconnect with him, but I felt like I was willing to give up everything in my life at that point just to be with him. That included my marriage. It may sound foolish, but let's be honest. Any woman in my shoes would probably do the same. After weeks of chatting without much progress, I decided to step up my game and make my move. I asked Leo out for a dinner date while Jim was away on a business trip, and to my delight, he agreed. I wore the most alluring dress from my closet and applied the boldest red lipstick for our date night. Before I knew it, we were in a hotel room getting intimate. We continued to see each other for the next 3 months, and I have to admit that being with him felt just as incredible as I had always imagined. However, something started to feel off. Firstly, he shared that his business was struggling and that he needed $100,000 to cover his losses. A week later, he requested to borrow my Bentley for a week, claiming he needed it for meetings with potential investors to make a strong impression. In that same week, he asked for another $100,000, this time explaining it was for his mother's intestinal surgery. Despite my suspicions, I kept giving in to Leo's requests, knowing deep down that he was only interested in my money. Little did I know, Jim had already caught on. Yes, my husband was aware of everything from the beginning. He knew about my obsessive social media behavior, my daily stalking of Leo, and even the dress I wore on our first date. He had known about my high school crush on Leo, but had never confronted me about it. And what about all those business trips he went on in the past? They were mostly schemes to check if I would cheat on him while he was away. I managed to pass the tests in the first 4 years, but in the 5th year, he finally caught me having an affair with the person I had been fantasizing about. Jim didn't confront me at all when he eventually returned home. He refused to say a word and walked past me as though I were invisible. I knocked on his door that night until my knuckles ached, but he didn't open it. The messages I sent him on the chat apps remained unread. I was incredibly desperate to speak with him so I could beg for his forgiveness, but it was too late. The following day, when I arrived at my office, All my employees were gathered in front of the large monitor, watching a video clip of me kissing Leo inside a restaurant. I was terrified at the thought that there might be more clips to come, so I quickly grabbed the remote and turned off the monitor. On that very day, I received a termination letter without any severance pay, citing unauthorized fund withdrawals as the reason. Shortly after, the bank manager contacted me to inform me that all of my accounts had been closed. When I returned home that evening, all of my belongings were already outside the gate. Can you believe it? I was evicted from my own home after providing him with 5 years of satisfaction in bed. Was I such a terrible wife that he couldn't treat me with a basic level of respect? Did he truly expect me to believe that he had never been involved with other women while he was away? But here I am, 1 year later, with no money, no family to call my own, and nowhere to go. I'm still attempting to reconnect with Jim, but every time I approach him, he closes the door on me. If only I could turn back time, I would never have gotten involved with Leo because he wasn't worth sacrificing my life for. I don't know how to begin, so I'll just go ahead. I messed up badly. I was foolish, and I posted yesterday in another subreddit about wanting an open relationship, which my husband discovered. This led to a massive argument, and he said things I didn't appreciate, so I left the house and went for a walk. A coworker of mine, the man I wanted to have an open relationship with, called me and invited me to his house. Since the conversation with my husband had gotten me nowhere, I decided to go along with it. I asked him to pick me up, and we went to his house. We had a few drinks and went to the bedroom. He turned on the TV, and we watched a silly movie for a few minutes. I was feeling adventurous, so I made a move and performed a BJ on him. The result was disappointing, to say the least. He ended up in about 20 seconds without warning. Then he pretty much ignored me and went back to watching TV. This continued for about an hour, and just as I was thinking about leaving, he started to initiate closeness. I basically thought, screw it, and went along with it. The sex was terrible, like embarrassingly bad. He declined to perform a BJ on me because his tongue was sore from eating Pringles. So we proceeded directly to intercourse, which turned out to be just 10 minutes of awkward thrusting. He forgot to pull out as well. Afterward, he rolled over and resumed watching TV. I simply got dressed and headed straight home. On my way back, I did some introspection and realized that all I had wanted was some excitement to break free from the routine, and it didn't live up to my expectations. When it comes to actual closeness, my husband is much better than anyone else I've been with, thanks to his extensive experience, and I wish I had realized that sooner. I was also overly critical of him. I mentioned his size in my previous post, but upon reflection, he's around 7 inches, so he's not as small as I made it out to be. I was simply letting a fantasy of being with someone else take over. When I arrived home, my husband was still in the kitchen. I attempted to talk to him, but he just put on headphones and started cooking pasta. Eventually, he removed the headphones and placed the pasta in a bowl. I asked if I could have some, and he replied that he doesn't share and proceeded to eat it all. I was exhausted and emotional, so I simply went to sleep. About an hour later, he woke me up, and I thought he was attempting to initiate closeness or something. But instead, he took my duvet and handed me a towel before going into the living room to set up to sleep there. I managed to get back to sleep after finding a rug. I tried to engage him in conversation while he was on the couch, but he ignored me. I woke up early because it was cold and the heater in my room was turned off. This extra time allowed me to reflect on how badly I messed up and how I need to become a better wife. Throughout the day, I made several attempts to talk to my husband, but he remained unresponsive. When I tried to initiate intimacy, he rejected me and left the room, which was a first for him. Usually, even if he was too tired for sex, he would at least engage in other forms of intimacy. But today, he seemed completely disinterested in anything. I also noticed that he hadn't eaten or drunk anything all day. He just appeared exhausted. I attempted to have a sit-down conversation with him, but he abruptly got up and left the house. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. So I sent him a text expressing my love for him and the need to talk for the sake of our marriage. His response was clear. I do not want to have a conversation or continue our marriage. I will be staying elsewhere until the new year. When I return, I expect you to be gone. This was my house before, and I no longer want you here. I've already contacted a lawyer, and we will communicate through her from now on. I won't be using this number anymore. I've made some calls, and it turns out my husband is staying at my sister's house. I'm worried because she's both attractive and single, and I've known that she's had a bit of a crush on him for a while now. I have a feeling she might use this situation to make a move. I sent her a text to inquire about what's happening, and she replied that she loves me but won't support me after what I did. She suggested that we shouldn't talk for a while. I understand I messed up, but she's my sister, and I expected her to be there for me right now, not playing the role of a housewife to my husband. Karma, that's all I have to say. Update. After everything went down with Leo, Jim filed for divorce. The process was grueling, both emotionally and financially. We had to divide all the assets, and it definitely wasn't in my favor. Jim, being the shrewd businessman he is, had top-notch lawyers. Since I was the one caught in the affair, the court didn't look too kindly on me. I ended up losing the house, a significant portion of my savings, and even my car, a big chunk of what I used to have. While the divorce was underway, Jim started spending a lot of time at my sister's place. Initially, I thought he just needed space, someone to talk to, but it turned out to be more than that. My sister, who I thought was firmly in my corner, began getting very close with Jim. Watching your own sister get involved with your husband amid a divorce is a betrayal I never saw coming. By the time the divorce was finalized, my sister and Jim were officially a couple. They were all over the social scene, attending high-profile parties, going to fancy dinners, and making appearances at events together. Then, not long after the ink was dry on the divorce papers, they announced their engagement. It felt like a slap in the face. They had this extravagant wedding, something straight out of a magazine, and of course, I wasn't invited. But in this age of social media, avoiding their wedding photos was impossible. My sister in her designer gown, Jim, looking at her the way he used to look at me. Post-divorce, I found myself in a small one-bedroom apartment, a far cry from the luxurious life I once lived. Every time I saw them together, it was a harsh reminder of what I'd lost. I realized the magnitude of my mistake in chasing after a fantasy with Leo, failing to appreciate the solid, real love I had with Jim. And now, he's found that with my sister. Adjusting to single life has been rough. Dating has been a string of disappointments and awkward encounters. The men I meet either don't pique my interest, or they're just not at the level I was accustomed to when I was with Jim. It's like I'm starting from scratch, but with the added weight of my past mistakes. Job hunting has been equally challenging. After the scandal at my old job, where I was a respected sales director, my professional reputation took a nosedive. I've sent out countless resumes, networked, attended job fairs, but nothing has materialized. The industry I once thrived in seems to have turned its back on me. There are moments when I'm alone in my apartment, staring at the walls, where I long for the days when life was simpler. Days when I had a stable job, a partner who loved me, and no worries about my future. I often find myself wondering how different my life would be if I had never given in to the temptation of an affair with Leo. The regret is overwhelming. Seeing Jim and my sister looking so happy and content serves as a constant reminder of the consequences of my actions. I lost a good man, a stable life, and ended up alienating my family. It's a tough reality to accept, but that's the thing about life, right? You make your choices, and you have to live with the results, even when they completely upend your world. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces. I attend a local support group for divorced individuals, which helps a little. I'm learning to live within my means, budgeting, and cutting back on expenses I used to not think twice about. I'm also trying to rebuild relationships with old friends I neglected during my marriage. It's a slow and often painful process, but I'm trying to find a way to move forward. The journey is full of ups and downs, but I'm learning to face each day as it comes, hoping to find some peace, and maybe one day a chance to start over. In the midst of all the chaos in my life after the divorce, a strange thought began to creep into my mind. Even though I didn't have any solid proof, I couldn't help but wonder if something fishy had been going on behind my back. I started to suspect that maybe my sister and Jim, my ex-husband, had secretly planned for me to have an affair with Leo. It might sound a bit crazy, but the timing of Jim spending so much time at my sister's place during our divorce, along with how close they had become, made me think twice. I couldn't help but question if my sister had intentionally or unintentionally played a part in setting up the affair, perhaps to clear the way for her own romantic interests. Jim's involvement in the whole situation added to my doubts. I didn't have any solid evidence, so it was just a hunch. This uncertainty continued to bother me, making me feel even more betrayed. I couldn't confirm or deny my suspicions, and this sense of doubt became a constant presence in my life, overshadowing everything else. My girlfriend and I had been in a relationship for 3 years, and we had been living together for the past 7 months. I recently turned 24, and she will be 24 in July. We initially met at school and started dating shortly after graduating. After finishing school, we decided to stay in the same area, found jobs, and each of us had our own place until earlier this year, when I moved in with her. I hold a degree in computer science and work as a programmer analyst. She has a journalism degree and works for the local newspaper, although it's a small publication, so her income is limited. Overall, our relationship had been going well. We had a good rapport, communicated regularly, and maintained an active, intimate life. That's why I was so shocked when I discovered evidence of her infidelity. I had assumed that we were each other's exclusive partners. Personally, I couldn't imagine being with anyone else, and that feeling remains the same today. I stumbled upon her affair over the past weekend while she was taking a bath. I needed to make a phone call, and my phone was on the other side of the room, while hers was on the table in front of me. As I reached for her phone, a message popped up on an app we both use, containing a nude photo from an older man. At first, I thought it might be spam, but then I checked her recent messages and noticed that she had sent him several explicit pictures, including one earlier that morning. When I delved deeper into the messages, I found numerous pictures of them together and a collection of suggestive texts. These messages dated back 13 days. In their initial conversations, they talked about how amazing their first encounter had been. So I assume that's when the physical affair started. While I felt defeated, there was a part of me that felt relieved, thinking that since I had discovered this early, we might be able to work through it. I was also relieved that there was no mention of love in their messages. They mainly discussed what they wanted to do to each other. Later, when she came out of the shower, she walked into the living room searching for her phone and saw me holding it. She noticed I looked upset and realized that I must have seen the messages. She came over to hug me, but I couldn't control my emotions. I ended up breaking down and kept asking her how she could do this to me. She began crying as well and confessed that despite being involved with this guy, I was the only man she truly loved. I inquired about the identity of the guy, and she explained that he's a business owner she met at her workplace. According to her, they initially met when he visited their office one day, and they struck up a conversation. The next day, he called her at work, seeking her opinion on advertising, and then invited her to lunch. During lunch, he disclosed that he was married with 2 children, but claimed to have an open marriage. He expressed his interest in her, and a few days later, she visited his business for a tour, which eventually led to their first intimate encounter. They've met up 3 more times, always after work at his store. She mentioned that his wife is aware of their relationship and is even interested in meeting me, which shocked me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She admitted that she hadn't discussed this with me beforehand because she believed I wouldn't understand. However, she insisted that she had planned to tell me about it that afternoon. I do trust her on this, as she asked me to keep my schedule clear for Sunday, expressing her desire to spend the day with me. I, however, urged her to end her relationship with him, but she firmly refused. She claimed it was merely a physical attraction that wouldn't progress further. Despite her words that I was the only man she loved and wanted to be with, her actions appeared contradictory. Once again, I found myself overwhelmed by emotions, pleading with her to stop. She continued to decline and tried to console me, assuring that things would be okay between us. She insisted this had nothing to do with me personally, and I shouldn't blame myself. She explained that this was a long-standing fantasy of hers, and this guy gave her the opportunity to fulfill it. She attempted to rationalize the situation, mentioning that affairs like these usually don't last long and rarely develop into actual relationships. She even mentioned that she'd like her affair partner to introduce me to his wife. I firmly told her not to bring that up again, as I couldn't even consider it. The rest of Sunday was spent lying around the apartment, contemplating that my life seemed utterly ruined, and I saw no hope for my future. Throughout the entirety of Sunday, she attempted to initiate intimacy with me, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. She reassured me that there were no health concerns because they always used protection, explaining it was an agreement he had with his wife. As of now, it's Tuesday evening, and I'm reaching out here because she recently informed me that they plan to meet up again on Thursday after work. I remained silent and have been ignoring her since she disclosed this. Currently, she's in the bedroom, shedding tears as she drifts off to sleep, telling me that I'm overreacting. Since discovering the truth, I've been sleeping on the couch. As I mentioned earlier, I genuinely love her, but I'm uncertain if I can move past this. I'm too embarrassed to confide in anyone about this situation, as I fear it may cast a negative light on my masculinity. I'm at a loss for what more I could have done to please her. Last night, I couldn't sleep, and I began researching open relationships. Initially, the articles deepened my sense of despair. But as I delved further, I was surprised to find that some people had positive perspectives on them. In fact, several researchers even suggested open relationships as a potential way for long-term couples to reignite the spark in their relationships. Have any of you been in open relationships or tried couples swapping? Can a monogamous relationship return to a healthy state after exploring such arrangements? These are my current inquiries, and I may have more in the future. Update 1. My girlfriend and I have decided to give an open relationship a 60-day trial after discussing it. Since my initial post, she hasn't seen the other guy again and has promised not to do so until I'm comfortable with it. I made it clear that I won't be involved with the guy's wife, as I believe swinging would be inappropriate for us. She was disappointed by this because she's concerned about me dating someone else apart from the guy's wife. She views them as safe since they're deeply in love and have been in an open relationship for over a decade. She worries that if I start dating someone on my own, I might fall in love and leave her. To prevent this, we've established strict rules that neither of us can break. After hearing my intentions, my girlfriend suggested returning to monogamy or me using a hall pass to even the score, then returning to monogamy. I declined because I also want to explore having multiple partners. I believe she now regrets cheating on me, or perhaps just regrets getting caught, as it seems she wanted to keep this one-sided. If you had asked me a month ago if I'd ever consider an open relationship, my answer would have been a definite no. However, after some reflection and research, I find myself intrigued by the idea. The one aspect I'm uncertain about is whether I can separate physical pleasure from love, since I've never done that before. In all my previous relationships, I've always had deep emotional connections. I understand that some of the people who responded to my initial post may give me a hard time, as most of them were firmly against open relationships. I suppose I'm more open to breaking with conventional social norms. Additionally, I believe that these types of relationships may become more common in the future, as women continue to explore new possibilities and men adapt to this evolving norm. Update 2. We've encountered a significant obstacle on our path to fully opening our relationship, and this is likely going to cause some delays. The issue is of a personal and rather embarrassing nature, which I feel comfortable sharing here since I can do so anonymously. Ever since I discovered my girlfriend had cheated on me, I've been struggling with performance in the bedroom. I don't have any trouble initiating intimate moments, but I find it difficult to follow through, so to speak. Not only that, I lose interest and energy after just a few minutes of any intimate contact with her. This is an entirely new experience for me, and it's a source of concern. My girlfriend is deeply worried about this as well. I had to be honest with her and explain that when I'm with her now, all I can think about is her with that guy, complete with his little man bun. As a result of this issue, she has recommitted herself to our relationship and wants me to do the same before we embark on our journey of exploring an open relationship. She's also expressed that her enthusiasm for the open relationship concept has waned, and she's leaning more towards wanting to return to a traditional monogamous relationship. She has even suggested the idea of us getting married and starting a family soon. A month ago, I would have eagerly embraced that chance, but considering all that has transpired lately, I'm now completely disinterested in it. I'm not even sure if I desire that type of relationship with her anymore. That's the brief update for now. Update 3. This update might get a bit intricate, so please stay with me until the end, and I believe it will all become clear. As I mentioned in my previous update, after discovering my girlfriend had cheated on me, I found it challenging to perform my boyfriend duties. Consequently, I became increasingly agitated and started feeling down. I also worried that something might have snapped in my mind, possibly affecting my future performance. In short, I decided to experiment with a dating app without informing my girlfriend. I contemplated using the app that starts with a T, but it seemed too explicit for me, so I opted for the one that starts with a B. This particular app allows women to initiate contact with men. In my profile, I explicitly mentioned that I was only interested in a casual relationship and disclosed that I was in an open relationship. On my very first day using the app, I received a like from a woman I recognized from my credit union. She had handled all the paperwork for my car loan last year and is quite attractive for her age. She's 40 years old, divorced, and has 2 adult children. I felt embarrassed and considered not responding, thinking about just deleting my profile. However, I decided to simply like her back and then politely decline her when she messaged me. But things took an unexpected turn when she messaged me, revealing that she had recently come out of an open marriage and was fully supportive of that lifestyle. Despite her profile indicating she was looking for a relationship, she expressed openness to a casual relationship and suggested meeting up for a drink. This response surprised me as I wasn't anticipating such a reply. I took some time before responding, almost letting the 24-hour time limit expire. However, I ultimately decided to go for it. I replied and asked if she had time after work the next day. She responded affirmatively, and we met at a local wine bar. We had an hour-long conversation, and she invited me back to her place, leading to some intimate moments. I can confidently say that I no longer have issues with ED. Since then, we've met up 2 more times at her house, and it's been an incredibly satisfying experience. As I mentioned earlier, the idea of an open relationship or casual intimacy was never something I would have considered before. However, I've come to realize that the prospect of someone being interested in you solely for physical pleasure is quite arousing. When we meet up, we quickly get down to business, and it's an amazing experience. It's like living out a fantasy. Both of us are having our needs fulfilled, and everything seems to be going well. I can envision a time in the future when our casual relationship will naturally fade away since we both desire long-term partners, and we acknowledge that our significant age difference of over 16 years is substantial. But I wonder if, even when we find our forever partners, we'll be tempted to occasionally meet to satisfy our desires. Now here's where things become complex. With a sense of guilt, I couldn't keep this secret from my girlfriend, and I ended up telling her on Wednesday night. She was deeply upset about it, but after being angry with me for a day, she came back and expressed her desire to return to just the 2 of us. The issue is, I don't want to let go of the satisfying and empowering experience I'm currently having. It's like I've never felt more fulfilled and confident in my life. I want to allow my external relationship to naturally conclude before reevaluating my relationship with my girlfriend. I previously suggested to her that she should reconnect with her affair partner for some time, but now she's not interested in that. What guidance can you offer me in this scenario? The final update. A lot has transpired since my last update, so please bear with me as I explain. If you recall from my previous post, I had informed my girlfriend about the woman I had been seeing. She was upset, but eventually accepted it. She suggested that since I had evened the score in terms of cheating, we should return to being an exclusive couple. I, however, was not willing to do that because I was genuinely enjoying my time with my new partner, and I had started to feel good about myself again, something I hadn't felt since I discovered my girlfriend's infidelity. This put a significant strain on our relationship, as my girlfriend kept urging me to end things with my new partner, and she was quite emotional about it. She expressed regret for her own cheating and vowed never to do such a thing again. She even formally proposed to me, getting down on her knees to ask for my hand in marriage. As I mentioned in a previous post, I would have been enthusiastic about this before learning about her affair. However, at that moment, I realized I no longer loved her and decided that it would be best for both of us to go our separate ways. So 2 weeks ago, I ended our relationship and moved out. I did my best to ease the impact on her by allowing her to keep my furniture and TV, and I agreed to cover half of the rent for the next 3 months. However, she has been deeply affected emotionally. She's been reaching out to me every day, suggesting various solutions, and pleading with me to reconsider being with her, or at least dating her. While I still have concern for her well-being and wish her the best, I no longer have any romantic feelings for her. To make matters more complicated, after I told my parents that my girlfriend and I had ended our relationship due to growing apart, my mom contacted my ex to talk. Instead of keeping it vague, my ex explained to my mom what had happened, admitting that she had cheated on me first, and then revealing that I had been involved with a 40-year-old woman. Upon hearing this, my mom was quite upset because my new partner is nearly her age. My mom shared this information with my dad, and now he's also upset with me. They both insist that I end my involvement with my casual partner immediately. I attempted to explain the nature of our relationship, but they don't comprehend these kinds of arrangements, and they aren't interested in learning about them. They have no understanding of concepts like friends with benefits or open relationships, which, to be honest, I was also unfamiliar with before all of this occurred. I don't want to give up the great thing I have going on, but I also didn't want to lose my parents' respect. So yesterday, I fibbed and told them that I ended things with her. It makes me feel guilty for not being honest, but the truth is, they'll never find out because they live 3 hours away, and they don't even know her name, nor does my ex. I shared this with my partner, and she's okay with it. She mentioned understanding how my parents must feel, and said she'd feel the same way if her son were in a similar situation. Our current plan is to continue enjoying each other's company until one of us finds a long-term partner, at which point our relationship will naturally come to an end. In conclusion, my life has taken some unexpected turns, and I've learned a lot about relationships, trust, and self-discovery. Despite the challenges, I'm hopeful for the future and excited to see where life takes me next. Thank you for reading and for your support.